He has made me glad. I am so glad. I will rejoice, for he has made me glad.
Hallelujah.
He has made me glad. I am so glad.
I will rejoice, for he has made me glad.
All right, guys, it's 48 hours to the weekend, and yes, I am counting blessings. If you like, bury your head where you want to bury your head. I'm counting, yes. Before we get to the weekend, we're here on Jasiri to help you get through the rest of the week. We work to make sense out of the craziness that is sometimes Nigeria. We keep you up to speed on the issues that matter to you as we Olive, as well as the conversations that may have gone under your radar. Breakfast Central's Olive Amodi is with us this morning. Good morning, Olive.
Good morning.
How is your side of News Central?
Well, News Central, Breakfast Central, you know, the most amazing show on the platform.
Really?
You know, I'm so excited to
on
be a
our
part of the
show.
You know, for
The
the audience of
audacity.
Jasiri, you should watch. Next time, people will not come to your show. Please make sure you tune in
It's the
7 a.m. to
effrontery
9 a.m.
for me.
every day to start your day with the best show, not just in News Central.
Are we going to
not
keep
just in
watching her do
Nigeria,
this? Who?
Africa, What in the world?
Catherine, you did this to us.
Actually,
so continue.
it's your fault.
How is her
Why would you
side?
be asking her? First of all, when we even started that with that intro, I just knew that something was off. I didn't understand why. I now realized, oh, Olive is here.
Wow. So I'm the off thing.
The
Wow,
Amodi.
wow.
Well,
Shots
guys,
fired.
so if you've missed our conversations this week on insertions in the budget, the rising cases of femicide in Nigeria, and the ongoing attempts to repeal the 2015 VAP Act, head over to our YouTube page and catch up. Yesterday, we asked if Nigeria should ban minors from social media after Australia's Prime Minister said the country would ban children 16 years old and under from social media platforms. Our first conversation makes a case for keeping children and teenagers off social media.
So if you're wondering what the first conversation is, now two Nigerian brothers, Samuel and Samson Ogoshi, have been jailed for 17 years and 6 months in the US. Guess what they did? They were involved in a sextortion scam that led to the suicide of Jordan DeMay, a 17-year-old student in Michigan. Now, the Ogoshi brothers pleaded guilty to conspiring to sexually exploit teenage boys in Michigan and across the U.S. 38 other U.S. victims were also identified as being targeted by these men, with 13 of them being minors. Now, the brothers first lured DeMay by sending him a friend request on Instagram, pretending to be a young girl his age. They flirted with him until they got him to send them explicit images, which they then blackmailed him with, asking for hundreds of dollars. Now, they threatened to share these pictures online with his friends if he did not comply.
He complied and sent as much as he could, but $300, about $300, and warned them that he would kill himself if they spread the images. They replied, and I'll quote, "Good, do that fast, or I'll make you do it." He killed himself less than 6 hours after they started talking on Instagram. The arrest is the very first successful prosecution of Nigerians for sextortion in the US, where it is a rapidly growing cybercrime often linked to Nigeria. Their defense attorney said the brothers' crimes were fueled by drug abuse and the sextortion scam culture in Nigeria. In April, 2 Nigerian men were arrested after an Australian schoolboy killed himself. 2 other men are on trial in Lagos after the suicides of a 15-year-old boy in the US and a 14-year-old in Canada. Nigerian authorities are working with the police in Scotland to investigate the case of a 16-year-old Murray Dowie who killed himself in December. So many killed in that sentence.
And that's just the underlying tone. So many killings. When have young people been such a target? Did you hear the brothers said hundreds of dollars? You're not even asking hundreds. This is where they say in Nigeria, you're not ashamed of yourself.
How old is the boy?
Yeah, I think it's just a shared display of their cowardice and how much of cowards they are. Because they are not, you know, when they say pick on someone your own age, they're not able to pick on someone their own age. And children are vulnerable. In cases of war, women and children are usually the vulnerable ones. So in this case, children are vulnerable, easily manipulated. So it's not, I think it's easily understandable why they're targets, right? And I'm very proud of the government, the US government, you know, for arresting these men, and we hope that if there are more men like this, they'll be fished out because they're a danger to the society, they're a danger to our children. And yes, I mean, I wasn't here when you were talking about the limitation on children's use to Facebook or social media. And I totally agree with it. If I had the opportunity, I think that I would I would support being able to manage children's presence on social media. Because I see some videos on social media and my heart just breaks. You see videos of parents that shouldn't be parents. There's a video of one who was smoking shisha and she would give her child to smoke. You know, there are videos of them dancing in a sexual manner. And you're just thinking, what is going on? Are kids still kids these days? Can we just allow kids to be kids?
Honestly, like, I feel like social media has amplified crimes that young children have no business committing. I'm not saying that there are crimes that they should commit, but you're seeing, and aside the crime, we're seeing suicide rates from depression, suicide rate from blackmail such as this one, or from bullying. And people are, like, young children are killing themselves. I saw one documentary about a young girl who went on hunger strike just because she wanted to look like a model. How old? 12, 13-year-old? Nobody knew what was happening. They would give her food and then she would just vomit it, keep it somewhere. Like, it was after her death that they found out that she was trying to be like somebody online. It's just very unnecessary. Look at these young boys.
21 and 23. I just think that we are losing our humanity. And a lot of things that children are exposed to these days are just totally too much. Even as an adult, we have to consciously sift through the things that we see. How about children that do not have guidance, that do not even know? There are many times I'll be scrolling through something and I will literally close my eyes to something because I don't want to see it. And I will move on. But children cannot filter. And
they just consume
these
everything
boys,
that's in front of
these
them.
are the kinds of stories that breaks my heart, because these are the reasons why many Nigerians that are, you know, that have something to offer the world will not be allowed access into some places because of the precedence of what some Nigerians have done. And now they put Nigerian brothers.
Oh, as usual now, as usual. But I want to quickly clarify something. The only reason why I'm advocating and saying, oh, we should protect the children is because they are minors. Because typically, if it was in a scenario where a woman was abused, I was saying, no, women should do this, or it would be like we're victim blaming. I don't want us to focus too much on the children. You know, and the reason, and just to highlight that, the reason why we're mentioning it is because they cannot protect themselves.
Of course.
We adults are the ones that should protect the children. That's why we're mentioning it. However, let's now go back to the perpetrators of this crime, you know, and to talk about the mindset that goes behind these people who have decided, you know, to not just be an embarrassment to the country, be an embarrassment to their family members, but also to then to perpetrate such dastardly acts. I think that is very heartbreaking. If you look at, sometimes I try to wonder what's the mindset.
But they look so young.
That's how it is now. That's how it always is. So if you go behind, you start to look at the mindset of these people and why they would do things like that. The recent cases of femicide that have sparked conversations on social media will then help you to start to see that a number of them already have perverted minds. You know, it's already a situation where these people there's a total overhaul. There's a breakdown in our moral compass that needs to be fixed. We need to go back to the families and start to talk about our value system. Our value system is broken. The minds of a number of these people their minds are warped.
You see, we talked about the influence of social media on minors. We even talked about young people. Gen Z is in focus because these boys are these young men are between 21 and 23. So you can imagine, to sit down there and you have done this, it's like cyber crimes when you sit down, Yahoo or 419.
But that's
you
what they're doing.
You ply these children. And then for the fact that you sit down and you send nudes of, you're posing as a young person as well. You say, okay, send me images, I'll send you images. Before you know it, you rope the child into a corner. For you to even say that, say good, or I'll make you do that, or I'll make sure you
They just do it in their mind, calling his bluff.
Do it fast. Yes, call his bluff.
And then the funny thing is, most times when these people are, or when these young ones are charged, not even just the younger ones, when criminals are charged that belong to other countries, especially outside, Nigerians are quick to like send criminals here to their country to go and get charged, but they don't do that. They won't send them back to us. Those guys will, if care is not taken, they'll stay in jail for the longest time, except there's an intervention. And then I also want to point to the fact that I know that this is not entirely related, but when we talk about the government, for example, increasing the age for university to to like 18. These are the arguments that people can put forward, because there's a way that idleness and moral decadence goes hand in hand.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Where you are at home doing, you say you're taking gap year, doing nothing. You're not even equipped enough to learn a trade, and then you are on social media. Idleness and access to internet is like it's a ticking
deadly
time bomb.
combo. Honestly, we can have this conversation and we'll keep bringing out pointers on what everybody should do. But when this kind of dastardly has happened, it's not one person that can be blamed. Everybody would have a portion on their table.
Including the people that knew what they were doing.
Exactly, and never reported them. And the Yahoo boys, this Yahoo syndrome, a lot of times when I talk with young men, they say things like, they have, they've done bad things to us in the past, our forefathers have suffered, so we're just taking back from them.
But we also have that attribute.
No matter what you do, you cannot build legality over illegality. How can you, what is your moral right to extort from someone?
I spoke to a couple, like 2 parents yesterday, and I brought up this issue of giving, quick to give a child a tab, a phone, a gadget, whatever
Just to distract them.
Do you know what they said to me? So what are we supposed to do now? It's bad enough that, I understand that everybody's eye is red. It's bad enough that we're stressed. We go to work, we come back, we make sure we provide for these kids. Sometimes you just need a sense of peace and calm. If we don't give them, if we don't make them aware of this at home, they will go and see it done outside.
And I'm glad that you
It's
brought this up,
it's
because
a
I was having a
crazy
conversation with a friend yesterday about how parenting requires a lot of intentionality. Parenting in this day and age, because when we were younger, the battles we had to deal with are not the ones that these Gen Zs, Gen Alphas will have to deal with, because we didn't have social media to pressure us. We could go out and play, and your parents could leave you with the neighbor. Right now, chances that you do that are very, very slim. So it's a lot of work. I'm hoping that parents can understand the pressure, and I completely get that exhaustion from you're working, your partner is working to make ends meet, and then you have to raise a child. But parents now need to go into, planning mode. The way you plan your budgets, the way you plan what are we achieving for the year. You need to plan, how are we going to raise this child? What values are we going to instill in this child? And how are we both going to discipline this child? Parenting is as much work. And I always say for the rest of us that are not yet married, that the most critical part of parenting is choosing a spouse to parent with.
Very, very. That one, I would just hang it there. Anyway, no one ever should lose a child to suicide, particularly in this type of situation. This really calls on parents to be as diligent and as we possibly can be. But even then, tragedy can still happen right under our noses. We'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll talk about the rising cases of suicide in Nigeria and what can be done. Please stay with us.
Welcome back. Today we're shedding light on a critical issue, suicide. Tuesday was World Suicide Prevention Day. It was a day set aside to raise awareness about a topic that affects people worldwide, regardless of age, color, gender, socioeconomic background, or geography. According to a World Health Organization survey, over 720,000 people die by suicide annually, and that's one person every 40 seconds. In Africa, Nigeria has the 13th highest suicide mortality rate, with males having a higher rate of 9.9%, 9.9 per 100,000 population, and females at 9.2 per 100,000 population.
All right, so it's essential to understand that suicide often begins with thoughts which stem from depression, leading to isolation, leading to poor mental health as well. So this creates a vicious cycle where suicide, depression, isolation, and mental health are all interconnected. So joining us to explore this critical issue and to discuss ways to support those struggling is a licensed clinical psychologist, Olabode Daramola. He's also a member of the American Psychological Association, the Nigerian Psychological Association, and the Nigeria Association of Clinical Psychologists. Olabode, welcome to Just Hearing.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning to everyone.
Good morning.
It's so good to be in the midst of all ladies.
Blessed
I'm
are
really,
you
really
amongst women.
comfortable.
That's so,
We always make our guests feel welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, Olabode, I know that you are aware that every September 9th is a day set aside to raise awareness about the issues of suicide. But we also know that one day is not enough to have this conversation. It's not a one-day conversation because we see it happening over and over again. And I'm particularly glad that we're having this conversation now, because just yesterday a man was rescued from attempted suicide on one of the pedestrian bridges in Lagos, the Lekki-Egbe Expressway. And it's just so saddening that we see these kind of cases. But before we go ahead, I would like for us to take a look at the video. Viewers' discretion advised, please. This video might be distressing for some viewers.
Hey, but what's like this Bajao? What did happen for this country? Yeah. Now wow, they didn't save this guy. He won't kill himself. I never reach now. I never reach. Now wow.
Olabode, this is very sad, and this is just one in so many others. I mean, we've recorded so many attempted suicide, even on the bridge, Third Mainland Bridge, and that's just in Lagos alone. There are so many other ones that happen across Nigeria. But it's sad that many people still do not believe that this is a Nigeria thing. People don't even believe that it's something we do in Africa, because they say whatever challenges you're faced with, you tough it off, you know, that kind of thing. So we don't exactly believe that we should be experiencing this kind of things, right? Some people even feel like maybe it's a facade of some sort, but the statistics don't lie. We're seeing these happen over and over again. So my question is, what do you think is the major reason why there's so much suicide attempt, especially in this part of the world where people feel that you should be tough?
Well, thank you so very much. Just like you have mentioned, suicide is a world phenomenon, and it's not peculiar to either Africa or even Europe as well. Anybody could jolly well experience it, especially when your goals are thwarted. Look at the young man that is in there. I can tell you for sure that he may have been giving signs to people, but people didn't get to notice until they had to get to that level. For as long as you are a human being and you are not able to fulfill your goal, there will be challenges. And everybody has a breaking point.
Yeah.
And so you need not get to that breaking point before people can intervene. For that guy you see out there is already at that breaking point. And for people who commit suicide, I tell people they are first people. About 90% of them are suffering from depression that is actually undetected, undiagnosed, or even undertreated. People don't just kill themselves. There is something going on. And that's why they are seeing death as a way of escape.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the way they see it.
And there's something that he mentioned earlier, that he may have been giving people signs that they didn't realize. So what would you say are some of the signs that people need to look out for in their loved ones?
There are warning signs for suicide, and people will always give it. And the first thing is hopelessness. People will just tell you, I don't think everything is going to be all right. I don't think I'm going to do well. And there's that sense of isolation. You're having a party, you're having fun. You just see people go on their own, not wanting to talk to anybody. Even in their dressing, you can know. Someone who is usually very cheerful, you see them wearing dark colors, they don't want to talk to people. And the things they take interest in, you just realize that they don't want to do it anymore. We need to pay attention. And then use of alcohol and drugs is very, very... The problem in Nigeria right now, if you see, it's everywhere. Every bus stop, you see people taking some form of substance.
That's such a drink.
Because they think that they can actually get over their problem by drinking. But when the hangover goes away, the problem is really still there.
You know, I want to ask you, sir, Olabode, what role, because I shouldn't even say what role, I know that economic factors play a significant role. And of course, cultural expectations play, you know, they're contributing to this suicide rate. How does this cultural stigma around mental health impact people? Because in Africa, we just started talking about it.
Yeah.
It's not something that you will see us readily want to admit.
About.
In fact, when I was young, and when my mother would say something like, it's Yoruba to say that she had a baby and she got crazy. So it's like a stigma on its own that people don't want to touch. So what does this thing, how does this case us in Africa and prevent us from really focusing on suicide that is something big that we should be talking about?
Thank you very much. I think for us as Africans, we need to be as open enough as possible and begin to engage and talk about these issues. Like you mentioned, the Abyssinian matter, that's a postpartum depression. And a woman who is pregnant is actually faced with a lot of challenges. If there's not enough support, it could happen to just about anyone. Mental issues can affect the rich, the poor, the obscure, the perverse, and that's why everybody should be interested in this matter. The stigma is out there. But for anyone who is going through any situation, we need to let them know that they are not alone in this matter. And the financial challenges, everything that is happening around us in Nigeria, is a pointer to some form of mental illness. You know, and there's one thing that usually happens to people who are suicidal. They feel like a burden to people. You know, you hear people tell me, I really don't want to bother you. I don't want to be a burden on you. I think I should just go. And there are people, you know, when you look at suicide, it's both action and inaction. There are some people who carry out the action to kill themselves, like that young man there is doing. But there are this kind of people, their own is due to inaction. Maybe when they're supposed to take their medication, they refuse to take it. When they're supposed to see their doctor, they refuse to go. It's a way of actually killing oneself. And the intention is there, that they just want to end it all because they feel that there is no hope. And so every one of us, the message we should have out there is a message of hope. That whatever it is that we go through in life, there's always an expiry date. But that expiry date shouldn't be death. Because at the end of the day, most of the things we worry about so many things. You know, coming to the studio, you're wondering, maybe you won't even make it to the studio. What if you sleep and you then don't wake up? But what if you do wake up? So there's a message to everybody. Yes, the challenges are there. But if we stay alive, we can overcome the challenges. Like I tell people these days, you have to do what the clock keeps doing. The clock keeps ticking. So keep going at your goal. Even if you feel that you are becoming a burden on people, there are people who are out there to help. You go to point A, they are not willing to help, then move to the next person. And then if you feel trapped as a person, speak out. Either in your relationship, in your marriage. There are a lot of women who are struggling financially. Some women have even become breadwinners of their families, and it's a huge challenge.
I mean, this is a conversation that we're having in the makeup room before we came in. So I'm glad that you've highlighted that. I'm hoping that we can have a little more time to talk about therapy. But let's talk about the role that the internet plays when it comes to depression and anxiety and suicide. Before you came on, we started the show talking about, yes, we did talk about this young man. Thankfully, his own did not end in suicide. But yesterday, the ladies were talking about a story in Australia where they're looking to ban younger adults, children under 18 from using social media. So I want you to share with us the relationship that the internet plays and the impact that it has on one's mental health.
Thank you so very much for that question, because every one of us now, we live on the internet. There's no way, it's very difficult to actually avoid it. And you know, whatever affects your thoughts will affect your feelings and then the resultant behavior. It is important that as much as internet is good, we need to monitor what the children do. Do you know that if you want to prevent suicide, we try as much as possible as we are creating awareness, not to even show videos. You know, there are some games you see, people will tell you 1,001 ways to die.
Yes.
And you see young people glued to it.
So we have to... you Google it, I think it's something Google should recognize as a bad word and not allow you be able to access such information.
So we need to keep our young people, even the adults as well. So the more you hear that, oh, this person commits suicide, before you know it, another person does it. And so we should speak more to not doing it and how people can get help. So anytime we're talking about suicide, we should be able to share numbers of how people can get help, who they can actually talk to. Because I can tell you that social media has its advantages and disadvantages as well when it comes to suicide. And then I want to talk to people. You know, when you see people, a lot of people commit suicide, they feel left behind. Oh, look at where my mates are. See where I am now. God, when? When you see somebody, when you see somebody, you know, you went to school with someone and all of a sudden they're on TV, you see them, or they're on social media, they're well-dressed, but you don't know what they're going through. And a lot of people go to these spaces at night when they're about to go to bed. And they are anxious, they become depressed, and at the end of the day, they feel really worthless. So it's important that we mind and we guide our mind towards whatever we see or do on the internet.
I'm here thinking suicide, I'm here thinking depression, I'm here thinking the factors that can contribute or factors that we as a society can glean over or overlook because of misconceptions. You hear someone say, oh, don't think about it too much. Oh, you know, you're a man. You're supposed to chest it like a man. Don't let people see your weakness. People who commit suicide, are people who are selfish and don't think of somebody else, or the person really get mine, because it's not really easy to kill yourself. So we hear all of those narrations, and people say, okay, suicide is not something you talk about. I've been showing it, like you said, I've been saying it. I'm struggling financially, I'm struggling emotionally, and no one seems to pay attention to me. It's like you're silent and you're invisible, and nobody pays attention because everybody's just carrying on with their daily, life. So the question I would ask is, are there some misconceptions that we as a society, we need to, about suicide, that we as a society overlook very easily?
Thank you so very much. One of those myths is that suicide it can't happen to everybody. Or you can say it can't happen to me. But it just can happen to anybody. I mean, for as long as you're human, it just can happen. It's a disease. Some people will tell you, you can snap out of it, you can get over it. Like my mom will give me a slap and then I'll go out of my depression. It just doesn't, you reset your head. Now there's a lot of awareness right now. A 5-year-old can come to me, I have a 5-year-old since some years back, and he says, my brothers and sisters are actually making us and they're affecting my mental health. In our days, people will ask you, what do you understand by mental health? The awareness is now out there, and we need to create more and listen to people. Our world is a world where we have a lot of knowledge, but we don't listen. We should not listen to judge people. We should listen in order to assist. A lot of people who commit suicide are actually isolated. When we started this year, we started with this mantra, no grief for anybody. It could be in the negative or positive. Or like you're not looking at their faces. I think we need to look at people's faces. And we ask them, how are you doing? And from the how are you doing, don't just accept okay, fine from people. Because when people tell you they are okay, they just want to get you off their back. So you go further. Are you coping adequately? It's a discussion we can begin to have. In your home, your food and everything. Because now, as we're talking about Nigerians, one of the ways through which you can actually prevent suicide is by even what we eat, or even depression. But do you know that Nigerians are eating what they see at this time?
Yes.
They are not eating what they really want to eat. So around that, we need to have discussions. What are the fruits that we have that can help our mental health? Is there something we can plant that can help us? The greens. Unfortunately, so many houses in Lagos, people cut down the trees, and they are indeed good for our mental health. We need to improve on some of these things. And then every home at the moment should really sit down and have a discussion as husband and wife. What are the things that are most important for us to do? And what are the things that are less important? Because like you mentioned while I was coming in, a lot of Nigerians have, the challenge is there. And so what do we need to focus on? Let's focus on what is most important. And we need to let our children understand that if they can't have this now, they can have it later. That's delayed gratification. Because you see a lot of them, this holiday we didn't go abroad like we usually do. We can't have the cereal we really want to have. We need to have a round table.
I think another aspect that we're not even looking at is the fact that sometimes depression and suicide is not caused by anything external. There's clinical depression.
Exactly.
Some people can have everything. They're wealthy, they're from a good family, everything is working well, but they're still depressed, they're still suicidal. So,
Thank you very much. We need to mention that because depression could be as a result of imbalance in brain chemicals called neurotransmitters. And that's why if you're depressed and it is not treated, it can predispose one to suicide. And that's why you see people who are rich, artists that are very wealthy, and you're wondering, how can it happen to us?
Olabode, thank you so much. We would continue the conversation, and two things that stood out for me while you were talking is the first one, it's not like we didn't know it, but the fact that you were able to articulate it well, that whatever affects your thoughts, affects your feelings, and then affects the resulting actions. And that led to the second thing I was thinking, that one thing that I'm grateful for the younger generation is that they are now more expressive. The only mistake we're making as a society is trying to shut them up, saying that they're too, they speak their mind, which is something that is good, because you hear a young person saying, I'm losing it. You hear someone saying it's affecting my, it's not something we should trivialize, right? Because we're trying to advocate for people to speak up more. So if a child keeps saying, I'm losing it, we should look into it. So
no, it's easy for us to just say, no, it's okay, you're gonna be okay.
All right, but before we get into the rest of the conversation, we'll take a short breather here. And when we come back, we'll discuss the signs to look out for, like Olive had hinted. And of course, we'll talk about the call for Nigeria to decriminalize suicide. You don't want to miss this conversation, so stay with us.
This is just Siri. Don't forget to join the conversation on social media. We are at News Central TV. Today we're looking at the increasing rate of suicides in Nigeria. Just yesterday, a man was rescued after he attempted to hang himself off a pedestrian bridge in Lekki. The video has once again ignited the conversation around suicide in the country. Our guest is a licensed clinical psychologist, Olabode Daramola. Olabode, before we talk about the the decriminalizing, that's quite a mouthful, of suicide and what we need to look out for, we should take note of the gendered aspect of this conversation. Data says that women are twice as likely as men to experience major depression, yet women are 1/4 as likely as men to take their own lives. Men make up the majority of the suicide victims that we see. What do you think about this? This is like gender, most of the time, well, I've heard it in many parlance that women are stronger mentally, that men are weaker. Why is this? Is it like the composition of the male structure is different from us women? Maybe they have less of estrogen and we have more of it. Why are they more prone to it?
Yes, the hormones, like you mentioned, can also be a factor. But I can tell you that more women actually attempt suicide, but more men actually complete it.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh.
Because suicide can be fatal and can be non-fatal. It is fatal when you actually go ahead, like for the man you saw, that's an attempted suicide. So we have more women even attempting than actually completing. Because women will attempt with things that are very subtle. Maybe medication. I don't want to mention it online, you understand what I'm saying? But men have that strength to actually go on ahead and go do it. Because many times, based on research, the women will probably think of maybe their children, people that are important to them. But a lot of men will feel, I don't think I'm important in this matter. I can as well as put an end to it. And then sometimes, why women want to attempt more, like you mentioned earlier, the circles is usually a challenge for women. And you can imagine combining anxiety and depression with that too. It makes a lot of women feel more susceptible to either anxiety or depression. We can either way lead to.
I'm so sorry. Before we continue, I would like for you to help us clarify the difference between anxiety, depression, panic attack, because a lot of times people just generalize it. Oh, you're having anxiety. Oh, you are depressed. Or you are depressed. You are having anxiety. So they literally just.
Anxiety and depression, they are two sides of a coin. Do you know that everybody feels restless? Even coming into the studio to start a show, there's restlessness that is involved. But anxiety disorder is that restlessness that stops you from doing whatever you have to do. Oh, so like coming in here now, I could feel a panic attack and I cannot continue with the show. It becomes a disorder. So that's anxiety. The feeling of, like if you want to write an exam, there's that feeling of being anxious. But at the end of the day, you calm yourself and then you write your exam. But it becomes a disorder if it goes on for too long and then you are not able to cope. But depression, this is intense sadness. It's a brain issue. You lose interest in things that used to be very pleasurable, like not wanting to do anything again. And then it's intense sadness that you're not able to control, and it affects almost every area of your life. Such a person will start slowing down. Forgetfulness. You just realize that you can be in a place, you don't have the feeling of time anymore. They call it time agnosia. Wow. You wake up in the morning, before you know it is 4 p.m. and you haven't done so much. You haven't had your bath. And the first thing, people neglect their personal hygiene. Like I tell people in practice, depression has a smell. You see that people begin to neglect themselves. They can't even remember if they have had their bath. They can't even remember if they're taking their meal. And you can see them withdrawing. Somebody used to be very lively, who used to smile and happy. They are gradually slowing down and they can't pull life together.
As much as, there's nothing good about depression, but the silver lining in this depression that you have described is that people around can see that there's a problem and can intervene.
The warning
Let's talk about the
signs.
flip side, the one that is functional depression, where they're still able to do everything that they typically would do, and everyone thinks they're normal.
That everything is okay.
Everything is okay, rather, I'll take that. Everyone thinks that, everything is okay with this person, but then they go back home and it's a battlefield. How prevalent is that? And how can we, maybe spot that and offer help, really? Because I think that'll be the most difficult one.
Very, very difficult to spot. And that's why it's important for everybody. The same way you go out, see a medical doctor when you have pain on your leg or any other part of your body, the same way you should do a annual check if you feel that something is just wrong up there. If something is wrong with you and you still have the opportunity to be able to notice it, you see that you're slowing down, you're not putting enough work as you are doing, just go ahead and check. Speak to somebody. Do an assessment, because there's certain assessment that will help bring it out. No matter how much, you can make up, you can do everything, but there are test batteries, clinical assessment that will show that, oh, this person claims to be okay, but they're actually not okay. And that's why people will say, oh, I still saw him yesterday. He was at the party, she was dancing, everything looks all okay. But you never know.
No, that's the thing. You never know. And because we struggle, people fear rejection. I might be going through so much. I can't talk to my ladies here that this is how I'm feeling, because I don't want them to look at me a certain way. Men, probably is tougher for men because everybody looks at man as macho. So how do they come out of this to even say, listen, I need to go somewhere and get myself checked, or something is not right with me. Yeah.
And that's why the conversation has to be very open, and we need to speak against stigma. It is okay not to be okay.
Yes.
So if you are going to see a therapist, it is indeed fine. People should be open enough to helping you get a number. I've seen people who say, you know what, I want my friend to see you. She can't pay for the service. I will pay on her behalf. And for such people who come that way, I give them some form of rebate and say, because you are even helping a friend, you get this particular discount. And that way we can all help ourselves. And even as we are here this morning, I'm sure there are a lot of things you can talk about, but you chose to talk about this because you know the importance. There are a lot of people who would have lived, but because people didn't pay attention, they didn't hear it enough.
Yes.
And that's why one of the ways through which we can stem the side, is for, group counseling, for people who are going through the same thing to begin to come together and talk about it. Maybe people who have lost important people in their life, those who are grieving. Maybe if you lose somebody that is very important, there are a lot of them who end up with depression, and they just want to be with the person that have died. And some mask it, they show you they are okay. But at the end of the day, you see them fall apart.
Now that you mentioned those things, it's making me to think of treatment options. I see a lot of groups abroad. They have support groups. You have places like Alcohol Anonymous. You have people dealing with so many different cancers, recovery, so many of those kind of things. In Nigeria, we're talking medication. The cost of it is. A lot of people even believe that to see a therapist is a very expensive venture. Therapy, because some will say it's different to see a therapist, to not even be able to pay for your therapy. It's different from consulting. It's paying for your therapy. And maybe there are other alternative approaches. This is Africa. This is Nigeria. Herbal medicine is everywhere. And they will tell you that, I
was about to say
and sir, I want to say that. I know that sounds like a joke, but abroad I've seen people that use sage. They tell you that when they burn sage, it has a calming effect. It takes away negative aura. So let's not just park it at the feet of Africans only. There are other people that find out. I know people that believe in crystals. These crystals they hold in their hand, they believe this energy, this color of crystals. So sometimes in Africa, when we talk about traditional medicine, everybody just thinks it's agbo or elewe kind of thing. No, but there are alternative therapies everywhere. Can you please engage our mind in some?
Alternative medicine isn't bad if they are proven, but the challenge is usually dosage. And then when you look back at the history of mental illness, people treat through exorcism. They gather leaves together, they burn it, believing that the spirit will be smoked out of the person, that whatever it is that is responsible will be smoked out. But with the coming of science, we look at things that we can see that has been tested. Like we mentioned earlier, imbalance of neurotransmitters in the brain. And this is what medication will do. If the neurotransmitters are imbalanced, the psychiatrist will prescribe medications that will help to actually temper that. But I often tell people, like we are saying, prevention is indeed better than cure. And then the cure we talk about is in two parts, medication and then psychotherapy. There are a lot of people who benefit from psychotherapy, talk therapy, and there are some who may need medications. depending on the situation. That's why assessment is important. So as I sit here and I can't tell you, oh, go and take this agbo, or go and before people go and they'll start taking a hand.
All right, so
how about support groups? Sorry.
Yeah, there are a good number of support groups in Nigeria, you know, for depression, for grief, for anxiety. They are out there. Interestingly, people can take advantage of it. I'll share some with you, hopefully, and then you find a way of sharing it with people before we leave.
All right, so let's take a look at the countries and a bit of data here. So unfortunately, Nigeria remains one of the few remaining countries that still criminalizes attempted suicide instead of recognizing it as a cry for help. Look at the young man who tried to commit suicide in Abuja in July. He was arrested. He's faced charges under sections 231, 111 and 114 of the Penal Code Act on attempted suicide, disturbance of public peace and incitement. He faces 1 year in jail. Now, some argue that the benefit of criminalizing attempted suicide is to serve as a deterrent by coupling it with punitive legislation. However, global evidence shows that criminalizing attempted suicide hasn't helped the rates of suicide in such countries compared to countries where it is now decriminalized. My question is, where are you aligning in this debate?
Well, thank you very much. I think it's important to let people know that the one who attempts suicide is doing it for a reason that we all may just not be able to know. In Nigerian Penance Code, maybe 1916, it says that anyone who attempts suicide will be in prison for a year.
Yeah.
What about those who complete that suicide? We leave them to God. But the good thing is Lagos State. The Lagos State law now hasn't even criminalized attempted suicide. If you attempt it, hospitalization is the next thing. For that guy now, he is in Lagos. He will be picked up and then checked up into a clinic where they can actually be properly checked. So for me, if there's anybody who attempts suicide, my own space is this person is someone who actually needs help.
Exactly, not prison.
Not to go to prison, where they experience much more pain and anguish. So there should be some form of assessment to determine if the person has a good head on his shoulder, if he's thinking appropriately. Because I can tell you for that guy, he has been through a lot. He has seen Shege Pro Max. Like when
has all the words.
So there should be some form of assessment.
So I'm thinking you criminalize it and then you send them to prison. It's only a matter of time when they find a convenient maybe method to do it again. They do, and this time they try not to fail. So it's something that we need to look into. But also, I apologize if I'm taking us back, but before the break, you mentioned something about which Olive hinted, that you don't have to be depressed to commit suicide, or you don't have to go through certain things before you are depressed. I would like for you to shed more light on that, because you know, this age and time, when people talk, we hear a lot of times when they say the rich also cry, and they're like, what are you crying for? I'd rather cry in a Benz than do this. And but we don't know that a lot of people who are battling, are going through things. So I would like for you to expatiate on that. Is it more of a mental situation? Is it something that can be controlled? What causes it?
Thank you very much. Do you know that in life, every human being, you need a level of stress to have a balanced life. Like I tell people, there is the positive stress and there's the negative stress. When you are in an environment where things appear to be too perfect, it is also a cause for concern, if you know what I mean. The road is good, there's 24 hours light. You know, like people abroad also commit suicide. And so there's nothing to really worry you as a human being. There's nothing to look ahead to. It's a problem in its own. I saw someone recently, by the time we were talking, and I told the lady, I said, your problem is that you don't have any problem.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And so it is, because everything seems to be taken care of, you know, the driver, everything seems to just be perfect. And when it is too perfect as a human being, when you don't have anything to look forward to, it is a problem in its own. So you must wake up in the morning and then you're seeing something, you're doing something. And then one of the major reasons now why Nigerians are down is because of the inability to actually construct a future, because you don't know what can happen tomorrow. And that's why I can tell you that, financial crises and all of that, it may not be the reason why people are depressed, but when everything is just too perfect, they are doing everything for you, you're not doing anything.
So
There
there's
could
no
be,
challenge.
yeah, there's
to
no
the
challenge.
I
Nothing
think
to challenge your brain.
another layer to the conversation, which unfortunately we don't have time to look at today, is to talk about, neurodivergence and the role that it plays on mental health. With those who have ADHD, they're not even aware. They've not been diagnosed. We don't have a lot of material. I once was having a conversation with someone to say, do we have information on ADHD? Do we have a support system? And the impact that all of this has on mental health. And I'm hoping that we can have you another day and maybe delve into that area of the conversation. But I think a good way to cap the conversation would be help. What sort of help is available? How can people support their family members who are dealing with depression or suicide or anxiety? How can we support them? And how can people who are dealing with this as well be able to show up for themselves?
Thank you very much. I think the first thing is we need to pay attention to people. When people are talking about death and they're asking you, people do self-validation and they want you to talk. Oh, how do you think? There's a story of a particular lady after dressing up. She asked her friends, how do I look? And they said, oh, you look ugly. She stayed in the room and she drank a bottle of perfume. There are a lot of young people who are looking for validation. And so we should validate them. As a parent, hug your children. It is therapeutic. Tell them they are beautiful.
I'm so
Tell
sorry,
them they are.
but some people would argue that I wasn't born for you. I have my own challenges that I'm facing, because I hear a lot of people say that I can't be giving you validation. I have my own problems that I'm going through.
The parent or the child?
No, not just parental. I'm talking about societal. Like you come to work, you're expecting me to hug you. You get like a lot of people are battling their own challenges. So if they don't have that validation to give, is this such a bad thing?
Well, it's not so bad, but it is important that we all need to start changing the narrative. It's part of what we're talking about. We should pay attention to ourselves. Be your brother's keeper. Your colleagues, you see that, okay, she used to be okay, all of a sudden something is going on. We need to ask questions. I think because at the end of the day, is when something happens to that person, people will now say, I knew she was somehow, but you could have done something about it.
I think something else that I would say in response to that would be the importance of having community. Because
community,
if
very
all
important.
of you are part of my community, and I come to you blessing, but I can't get the emotional support I need from you because life is also happening to you, I can lean on Lolo. If Lolo is not also available that day, I can lean on Catherine. So the importance of community cannot be, overemphasized in conversations like this. But
thank you so much.
There's something I want to talk about before we go. We need to improve our health-seeking behavior. Every organization, when people are saying, I want to go see a therapist, please give them the time to go do so and hold them accountable.
And we should start having insurance for, insurance
exactly.
should include health therapy.
Wow, what a very robust conversation we've had. Very sensitive too. And we want to thank you very much, Dr. Daramola, for joining us today. Very, very insightful. If you or someone you know has thoughts of suicide, there are organizations out there who can help. Many offer free counseling. Please, we urge you not to keep silent. So we've come to the very end of today's show. That is all we can take. Friday is right around the corner, which means that Hot Topic Special is going to be on display. We've got a Nollywood heartthrob who will be bringing in some heat to the show, to the Jasiri table tomorrow. You don't want to miss it. But for now, we'll be saying thank you and bye.
On behalf of...
See you guys.
I'm not even in the mood.
Thank you very much, Jasiri, for...